Subcommittee on Economic Development, Public Protection, Tourism, and Energy, and we call this meeting to order. And Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll? Me and Russell will say here.
Representative All, Representative Bray, Representative Gentry, Representative Hart, Representative Lockett, Representative Petrie, Representative Reed, Representative Weber,
Here.
and Representative Fugit,
Here.
Chair.
And we thank you all for coming. We don't have a quorum to approve the minutes from last meeting, so we'll go ahead and get on into the agenda. We have today with us representatives from the Energy and Environment Cabinet, and if you want to step on up to the table, they'll be presenting today on the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act federal funding that their cabinet has received. I appreciate y'all coming in today and giving us an update. And once you get settled in, we'll raise your right hand and be sworn. If you're ready. Do you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
If you'll introduce yourselves and then proceed with the presentation.
Well, thank you very much. I'm Rebecca Goodman, Secretary of the Energy and Environment Cabinet, and I have with me today two of my all-stars who are going to tell you how they're spending a big pot of money. We have Director
Okay,
Dennis.
we know that others are on their way, so we'll go ahead and get started in respect for everybody's time today.
Is that?
Just for information's sake, Senate Bill
Tell
42
Chairman
will
Mills to
be
keep his comments on the other side of the room.
moved till next week's agenda. So
Turn your.
there's a slight technical change we need to make
They'll
on
fix it
that
here.
bill.
Just give us a second.
So before we get started, are there any guests who'd like to recognize? I've got a couple in the back.
We
that I'd
could
to
do like
recognize.
church and sing them down.
Back in the back, we have
They do that in the
it's
mountains,
United
right,
Way Day,
Mr. Adam?
at the Capitol, and we have three ladies from Henderson that are
And
back
my name
there
is Dennis
advocating for
Hatfield.
United
I'm the
Way.
Director of
Melissa
Division of Oil and
Clements,
Gas.
Rhonda Thompson, and Kelsey Dunn.
Justin Adams, I'm
If
the
they would
Director
stand
for the
up,
Division
and
of
we would
Abandoned
welcome
Mine
them
Lands.
to our
Let's hold
committee
up till
today.
they get this fixed.
All right.
Thank you, ladies.
All right, very good.
All right, proceed, Ms. Goodman.
Thank you. So we're going to talk today about some bipartisan infrastructure monies that are coming into the cabinet. These dollars are all going into existing programs, and so we have had to scramble a little bit. It's hard to spend a whole lot of money when you're not used to a whole lot of money, and we've done a bit of reorganizing and some things that have enabled us to put some teams in place to handle this. We're going to talk about $104 million coming into the cabinet for this fiscal year. There will be $99 million in the next fiscal year. In programs, we still have some programs that haven't gotten funding yet, so we'll come back and talk to you about those when we know. So we're going to start, I think, with oil and gas.
Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Again, my name is Dennis Hatfield, the Director of Division of Oil and Gas. As somewhat introduction, the bipartisan infrastructure law was passed in November of 2021, and it authorized, among many other things, expenditures set aside for federal grants for plugging of orphan wells that would be made available to states by application. And three types of grants were identified. Only one to this date has been presented as available to states. So in your first note there, the Department of Interior provided availability for a $25 million initial grant that states could apply for, and Kentucky did, along with 22 other states. And we were awarded and we received that grant officially on August the 25th of 2022. A constraint and complication to that grant was that the act required that we obligate 90% of that $25 million grant within 90 days. Obligate, not necessarily spend, but obligate, contract it out. And we had within 1 year to obligate 100%. So the grant did identify the activities that we were eligible to use it for basically plugging, remediation, and reclamation of orphaned oil and gas wells and facilities. And as most of you probably know, orphan wells are basically wells that have no responsible party. They're either pre-law or abandoned at some stage, and no responsible operator available to plug those. So orphan wells became the target of our work. To accomplish the 90% mandate that the Department of Interior required, our division assembled in total 42 orphan well plugging RFPs, requests for proposal, through the Office of the Finance Cabinet, the DECA office. And those 42 RFPs covered 26 counties in Kentucky. And in total, they contracted to plug 638 orphan wells. That was a pretty tall lift to accomplish within 90 days. The good news is that 7 of those 9 companies that are awarded contracts are local to Kentucky. There was a big concern when the grant first became in discussion that larger corporations would overwhelm the process and that smaller contractors wouldn't have an opportunity. So we were very pleased to see that of the contracts awarded to date, 7 of the 9 companies that have contracts are local to Kentucky, and 7 of their 9 subcontractors are local to Kentucky. So that's a big win for us. We think that brings jobs to the state, and it helps people, that can do the most benefit for our area. And to date, as of the first week of February, the Kentucky Division of Oil and Gas has plugged 328 orphan well sites in 15 Kentucky counties using the Department of Interior initial grant. And expenditures to date are shown as $8.3 million. Our next step in the process will be to apply for other grants as they come available. We do have a couple of slides that show the contracts awarded to date. You can see basically from east to west, we tried to hit as many impacted areas as possible. There are higher density areas of orphan wells across the Commonwealth, heavily focused in the east central, the big licking areas we call it, south central and west. Those are the predominant oil and gas areas. So those are the 26 counties that have seen contract awards to date. And the next slide, I believe, shows where we've actually plugged wells through this week. We have plugged in those 15 counties that are identified. We've actually accomplished plugging activity. And in some of them, the work continues. Ground conditions are kind of wet right now, but the work continues, but we have accomplished work in those counties. And I believe the next slide provides a summary of orphan wells plugged to date. And you can see by county the number of orphan wells that have been plugged to this point, and in total coming to 336 wells that have been accomplished and plugged, which will benefit the environment, the communities. It's from farmlands to woodlands to communities. It's all across our Commonwealth. So we think it's a good project and it's accomplishing good things. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Justin Adams, the Division of Abandoned Minelands Director there. The Division of Abandoned Minelands is an established division within the Commonwealth. We've been, for about the last 40 years, doing reclamation and abatement projects on historic mining hazards across the eastern and western coal fields of the Commonwealth. Part of the bill, or the bipartisan infrastructure legislation award that the Division of Abandoned Minelands received was and included $74.253 million annually. That's significant in that the division typically receives about $9 million in our award. And so it's a magnitude of increase in award funding for us. For the Division of Abandoned Minelands, eligible sites are sites that have been mined prior to May the 18th, 1982. And so lots of times folks may consider abandoned mine sites, and they think about perhaps some of the larger sites that they've seen, mountaintop removal jobs, particularly in the east. Those sites sometimes are not eligible for our program because of their date in mining. And so historic mining sites is really what our divisions is tasked with reclaiming. And so this award notice we received on October the 19th. The way this award works is it's $74.25 million every year for the next 15 years. Each year we have a 5-year window to expend that funding, and then there's a potentially an award extension of 1 year for each grant. So technically it's 15 years of funding with 5 years to finish out the last year, so it's a 20-year program. Because we didn't start until October, at this point we've expended only about $1.7 million. But we do have a host of projects lined up across the Commonwealth. Right now, our team has about 8 sites that are currently under bid that range in prices from $50,000 to $3.5 million as far as our estimates are concerned. And so we have a plethora of work and a variety of sizes across a number of counties. The actual known abandoned mine lands inventory across the Commonwealth, we estimate at about $900 million. And that's an estimate based on what we know. The division garners information from citizens. There's no true record of where old sites were mined at. People just call us and say, hey, we have this site we think is potentially a historic mine site. We go out and take a look at it. That's the way that we know what's out there. So of the information that we already have categorized that's in the e-AMLS system at the federal level, that information is all provided to us by the citizens. Typically, those problems are landslides, drainage problems, open mine portals, coal refuse piles, particularly in the east. In the west, we see a lot of underground mine subsidence and acid mine drainage problems. Where underground supplies have been impacted, where groundwater supplies have been impacted, those sites are potentially eligible for the water supply replacement program that the division implements, and we've been doing so for years, both in the east and the west, to supply potable water to citizens that have been impacted by historic mining. This funding can be utilized for that as well. Finally, as part of the overall encouragements issued to us by the Office of Surface Mining, this is in addition to the requirements that govern this particular pot of funding, which are delineated in SMACRA. The additional encouraged guidelines that we have include aggregation of bids into larger projects at the state and the regional level, something we're working toward. It encourages the support of pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs, the incorporation of input from disadvantaged communities. Of course, in the east and the west, disadvantaged communities are predominant, especially in the coal fields, which have been impacted by the downturn in the coal economy. And it encourages engagement with the public and their input on project identification. That's, in essence, what the division does to begin with. Particularly when these encouragements, in consideration of these encouragements, the aggregation of projects, we're looking at some larger community-level projects, we like to call them, we're getting ready to implement. For example, Providence in Webster County, you may be familiar with. Providence has a lot of subsidence issues out there. They've got several sites that have been recognized in the media because they've impacted businesses in the sites. And so we plan to implement a very large project in communities like Providence to help kind of address everything that we can find that's eligible. Typically, our division's been more reactionary, and we hope to be proactive with this money.
Excellent. So the next program is our forestry program. There are three pots of money there. We have the Community Wildfire Defense Grant, which is to help communities plan and mitigate against the risk of wildfire. That's about $400,000 in that particular program. The volunteer fire assistance is to assist volunteer fire departments providing grants for training and equipment. That has about $66,000. The state fire response assistance is for our technical training and to purchase and maintain the firefighting equipment that we have, and to allow us to do some fire management planning. And expended, you see, $1,888. So we're just getting started. We just got that money February the 3rd. The next one is the Brownfield program, an existing program, and most communities are familiar with brownfields. A brownfield's a property, the expansion, redevelopment, or reuse of which might be complicated by contaminants. It can be present or potentially present. The eligible activities to spend the $650,000 would be to provide grant writing assistance, which we do frequently to local communities, capacity development and redevelopment guidance, to identify environmental justice communities for enhanced outreach and assistance, and to build out our GIS capabilities to assist communities in tracking their progress. We've spent $70,788 in that program right now, prior to actually receiving the award, but those were approved. The next one is the Gulf Hypoxia Program, which received $1.7 million on January 18th. They have 5 years to spend this money. This will go to fund our staff to deploy and manage nutrient reduction strategy efforts and to assist farmers with their nutrient management plans. We developed training tools for wastewater and municipal stormwater managers that improve the nutrient treatment efficiency, and we fund additional conservation BMPs, best management practices through the state cost share, and fund additional U.S. Geological Survey flow gauges to improve nutrient monitoring. Spent about $8,892. The last category is one for which we have not received our actual grant awards yet. These are all energy program fundings that go into our Office of Energy Policy. We have the State Energy Program, the Energy Efficiency Block Grant Program, the Energy Efficiency Revolving Loan Capitalization Award, and we are still dealing with the U.S. Department of Energy, who continually is issuing guidance that changes a little bit every time we see it. So we're not really sure exactly what we're going to have to do to get this money. We know that we'll do whatever it takes in order to fund these programs. So that's basically a rundown of what we have so far. If you have any questions, love to answer them.
All right, thank you. Any questions by the members? Representative Gentry.
There it goes. Thanks, guys, for being here. A lot of information there. I'm brand new to this, but it looks like the biggest funds are in mine reclamation. Is that correct?
Mine lands, yes.
Yeah. And I may have misheard you, but did you say that you guys have located about $900 million in known problems that we have to address?
That's correct.
Okay.
Historically, the division's been collecting data about abandoned mine sites across the Commonwealth for 40 years. And so we have an inventory that has about 3,200 sites that we know of, and our estimate at reclamation's around $989 million. And that's probably conservative.
Okay. And do you foresee a huge challenge or problem with spending that money that's available, or?
No, I don't think so. The inventory's out there, and we're aware of it. We know where there are some very significant sites that need a lot of help. Probably the biggest challenge is just ramping up staff for us as a division.
Okay. Great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a couple questions on that, Mr. Adams. So is this the money that includes, like, if there was an old, what we call wildcat mining, back in the mountains years ago, where people just went in, set up, took what coal they could get and left?
Yeah, that's
does that apply to those mines as long as they were before 1982?
historic mining prior to May the 18th, 1982. That's correct. So, unlicensed mining before SMACRA, all mining was unlicensed. So,
Right. Okay.
But anything after that point, if it was wildcatting, it wouldn't be eligible.
Okay. And do you have a list of, like, how many mine sites there are in Perry County or Knott County or Webster County? Do you have a list of all these places that need the money to be spent? Do you have a list of those?
We do. We have a list of those 3,000 plus sites, and actually it's available online at eAMLIS from OSMRE's website. We're required to report all that federally, and they aggregate the data there nationally. So you can go to OSMRE's website and just look at the eAMLIS listing there, and you can drill right down to the county and look at the individual sites.
Okay. And how are the sites prioritized?
The OSMRE requires us to prioritize sites as categories 1, 2, or 3. We call them P1, P2, and P3. So P1 sites are sites that are impacting people's homes and their livelihood. P2 are sites that are impacting their property, and P3 are sites that are just impacting the general environment. And so, for example, considering the mountains in the east, a slide that's in the back of somebody's home that would be eligible, that would be considered a P1 site. A slide that might be impacting somebody's garden or yard, that might be a P2 site. and then a slide that was way up in a hollow somewhere, not really around anything, might be a P3 site.
Okay. And if a person has a slide that comes in there, or the mountain's starting to shift, so they call the AML office, the local office. They go out there, they test the water to see if that water's draining from an abandoned mine. They do their report, send it to you here in Frankfort, and then you all decide where that goes on the list of priority to be fixed or not.
Assuming the site's
Based on-
eligible, that's correct,
Right.
yes.
Okay. So there's certain minerals, obviously, that come out of the mines that would show up in the water half a mile down the road from.
Yeah, that's correct. So we do use water testing. We also just use physical evidence. Sometimes it's just obvious. You know, if there's a mine entry, a slide might appear and reveal an old work, a mine works. And so if we don't have any documentation of recent mining, it's a pretty good estimate to say, okay, that's probably historic mining. We can take a look at the techniques that were used in the mining to determine the age of the mines sometimes. And so, yeah, after gathering as much data as we can, we also take into account citizens' accounts. So older citizens that live in the area that might be able to testify as to what happened or did not happen there. There's a lot of information that goes into making a determination on eligibility.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. I thank you for your presentation today. Thank you for coming by and giving us an update. And if you could shoot me an email with that site on it,
Yeah, I'll be happy to.
so I can go back and look at it. One more question. How many counties in Kentucky does the AML money go? How many counties in Kentucky do we have abandoned mines?
Well, so that's a good question. As far as the number of counties that we have identified, it's well over 28. But we look at reports from all counties, and so there are a lot of counties that border the edges of the coal fields as we know them that still have historic mining in them, and those sites aren't documented. And so just because someone calls from a county we typically wouldn't consider a coal mining county doesn't mean we don't respond. We respond to all requests for investigation that we get. So.
All right. I think that's all the questions we have. Thank you again for being here today. Appreciate what you do, and keep up the good work. And if there's no other questions, we'll adjourn the meeting. Is that all we need to do? We don't have a quorum for minutes, right? All right. We have a motion.
We'd have 5. Yeah, we still need 5 to do a quorum, yeah.
All right, motion to adjourn.